I would highly suggest that you get blood work done.
Hi everyone, welcome to Life and Vibe. This is Ray, and I got some requests to show my puppies on camera. I got one. I don't know if you could probably, Junebug, come over up here just so people can say hi to you. Show them how pretty you are. So this is Junebug. Say hi, Junebug. And behind her, getting all feisty, is Miss Dolly. And so I did want to just show them. It probably went in and out of focus like 15 times. I decided today to try to follow up a little bit. Oh, sugar. Sorry, I've got this crazy bully here just going nuts over here. Anyway, welcome to all the new subscribers. I'm so excited to have you here today. I'm going to try to get this content done. I'm going to try to make it quick. I might even speed up the person. So I just wanted to kind of piggyback off the video I did the other day talking about Hollis and why I think being a non-expert and acting like an expert is not always the best plan, necessarily the safest thing to do. When you're giving, suppose medical and health advice. And so I found out that she had actually released a podcast at the end of May, and it was named The Hormone Doctor That Changed My Life. So anyway, she is with the Hormone Doctor That Changed Her Life. If you remember my previous video, it always said that these folks, these are things that are applicable to them, like I did that diet and so I lost weight, or I changed that habit and it totally improved my life 1000%, or I started this exercise and that worked great for me. What is applicable to you does not make you suddenly then the expert in that field. But Rachel, she's decided, this time she's going to bring in the doctor that changed her life. And of course, lo and behold, who do we have? Okay, so I decided to take a look, and it was Dr. Julie Brush. And it says here, have you ever looked into how your hormones work? Because I will tell you from experience that if your hormones are funky or out of whack, it can affect everything. Okay, Rach. Okay? All right. Let's see what she has to say. This episode of the podcast, I'm talking to Dr. Julie Brush, or naturopathic, however which way you want to go around, who works at the Amen Clinic, which is focused on brain health. It's all about an integrated approach, meaning, of course she has to explain, meaning care, medicine like medications, but with a preference in utilizing a holistic approach. So I just want you to point out here that a naturopathic doctor is very different from a medical doctor. Okay, it says the naturopathic approach seeks to identify and treat the cause of what could be wrong and to empower you with information, which I'm all about. Okay, naturopathic doctor is not a medical doctor. They don't graduate from the same school. They go to a totally different type of college. And then she's claiming, this woman changed my life because before I started meeting with her, I had no idea that my hormones were unbalanced and no way of understanding what role that could be playing in my mental health. Rachel, dangerous as ever, giving unlicensed, unqualified advice to people. If you've ever been looking to answers as to why you feel a certain way at different times, probably in your cycle, or why you can't pin your finger on what feels just off, then I think this conversation might be for you. I hope this gives you a light bulb moment it gave me and puts you on a journey of understanding your body, all of it, a little better. I'm just going to delve into this because I'm already getting heated. I'm going to have to grab my beer over here because Rachel Hollis got me heated already. I may speed up her speaking here because it's a long talk. I'm having to mentally prepare myself for the gobbledygook I'm going to hear today. And I'm not saying that what a holistic approach or a naturopathic doctor, doesn't have things of benefit to add. I don't want to be that just like, it's just, my medicine, my way or the highway. But I do want to say, I am curious. I have, had obviously hormonal changes myself in my lifetime because I'm in my 50s. So I've also worked with radiation oncologists and other doctors. And so I have an interesting outlook about hormones also. And just, we're going to listen to this like we're driving to work together.
I will tell you, and I know that people will probably think that they're hearing this over and over, but it's for a very good reason. Exercise is crucial. And I think it is, I know it is. I hear people all the time say, when I get busy, I stop exercising. Right? And it will help everything. There's this fantastic video online, it's the doctor whose name I'm forgetting right now, where he says, the one thing that I would recommend to all my patients, this is an MD, he says exercise. It helps everything.
So we already have the doctor quoting a doctor, or the naturopathic doctor, I should say, is quoting a medical doctor. So she's already referrals or where she gets advice from somebody who's an actual medical doctor. So this is why I won't stop it too much. Well, listen, I sped it up to 1.25 speed, and we'll just keep listening because it's long.
Whatever that looks like for you. For somebody that might be CrossFit HIIT workouts. For someone else that might be taking a 20-minute walk every day or doing yoga in your living room. So whatever that looks like for you, get moving and keep moving.
Good advice. Always consult your medical doctor first to ensure that you don't have any underlying health conditions and therefore that they can recommend the appropriate type of exercise for you. Certain patients I would not recommend. I do cardiac rehab. I work with an exercise physiologist. So I feel that, I may have some validity as a registered nurse speaking about this. But talk to your doctor first before starting any type of exercise routine. Okay? Wouldn't suggest that everyone should be out there doing a HIIT workout if you've got arthritic knees or you're due for a knee replacement.
Hi, I'm Rachel Hollis, and this is my podcast. I spend so many hours of every single week reading and listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos and trying to find out as much as I can about the world around me. And that's what we do on this show. We talk about everything. Life and how to be an entrepreneur. What happened to dinosaurs? What's the best recipe for fried chicken? What's the best plan for intermittent fasting? What's going on with our inner child? How's therapy working out for you? Whatever it is my guests are into, I want to unpack it so that we can all understand. These are conversations. This is information for the curious. This is the Rachel Hollis Podcast.
Jazzy.
I would love to start with who you are, what you do, and how we know each other.
All right, I'm Dr. Julie Brush. I'm a naturopathic doctor, and I work at Amen Clinic, which is focused on brain health. As a naturopathic doctor, I have an integrative approach, so...
Oh my goodness, I just realized. She has to work with Dr. Amen, the brain guy who does the supplements and stuff. Oh my God, I just had a bingo moment in my brain. And I stopped to mention Dr. Amen. I think it's really important before you hear Dr. Brush speak a little bit about the controversy that surrounds Dr. Daniel Amen, considered the most famous psychiatrist in America. And one of the products that Rachel has advertised and what she claims to be like a Rach Talk or a podcast or whatever she wants to call it, but it's just usually a glorified advertisement for some hokey medicine. And so I'm going to link this down below. I'm not going to say a lot. I'm just going to pick out the main highlights of this because I want to get back to her podcast. But I think it's really important to know this is the clinic that Dr. Brush works at. So Dr. Amen has built a business by really getting himself out on PBS stations across the United States. And what would be he's managed to link some type of partnership on that channel in which he's been able to make not only money from that partnership, but obviously really money by having developed 6 Amen clinics currently around the United States. Now, he likes to tout this SPECT scan for the brain, and it's considered by most in the academic psychiatry world as just spectacularly meaningless. I'm just going to scroll up this very quickly, but they just point out that Dr. Amen charges patients thousands of dollars to inject them with radioactive compounds and show them pretty colored pictures of their brains without any credible evidence that it adds up to the diagnostic or treatment processes. They also talk about the fact that he loves to tout his own proprietary supplements that once again are just considered to be absolutely nothing. This was from The Observer. This was dated from 2016. It's fairly recent. I don't think much has changed. He's just still taking a ton of money out from people. He likes to talk about the fact that he's got like near miraculous results, which if somebody talks about anything being near miraculous, you know that it's absolutely gobbledygook. Nobody would ever do that. They talk about, I'm not going to really try to promote him too much because it's terrible. I think he just makes a ton of money from this stuff. They think it's just, he's vague in the television programs. He says the way Dr. Amen's programs are presented and used by PBS amount to an unqualified, if an implicit endorsement. So they have real problems with how he's been able to advertise himself through there. I just wanted to point out, and I'm going to show you on his page himself, it says about the cost, which I think is the most important thing and probably what may drive him even harder. It says these services and products, moreover, don't come cheap. Just to have a consultation with Dr. Amen is a minimum of $400, and this was in 2016. At the time, if you had to have the SPECT examination, which would be 2 scans, that was $39.50 for the 2, and that was indicated that most medical insurance does not cover for these scans, so that would be coming personally out of your pocket. It says that obviously 85 to 90% of these patients who were seen did obviously elect to have these scans. They've been, brainwashed that this is going to be just what they need. And then he gives a mid-range nutritional supplement, which is called Brain and Body Power. And like our friends in the MLM business, he likes to set that up on an automatic monthly shipment at the very reasonable price of $84.96. That's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous amount of money for what is probably just nonsense. I actually heard the other day, just by chance when I was listening to the doctor's radio on Sirius, they were doing Chief's rounds, and there was a fellow doctor that was a medical doctor for psychiatry, and they were talking about Alzheimer's and dementia, and they happened to mention Dr. Amen and just the worthlessness of what he has offered to his patients, especially in the form of the scans and the supplements, and that he just seems to make a lot of money with it. You can question, I think, going forward, listening to this doctor, how much is this for profit and how much is this because they actively have true benefits from the services that they are offering. There's just very interesting information in this article. I would suggest that you read it if you are interested in just seeing the gobbledygook that's being offered at this particular clinic. I'm not saying it's necessarily all, but this is the one that Rachel loves to tout on about. Again, it's Dr. Google, and she's off and she's giving advice. They call the payment options affordable payment options, which they absolutely are not. So this is Dr. Amen's website. Again, it talks about why you should choose this clinic, and then it actually does go into the pricing, and it goes into how the cost of the consultation. So here we go. So obviously it's gone up a little bit depending on the type of appointment that you are making with Dr. Amen. There is a $500 to $1,500 deposit that is required just to secure an appointment. There's a very stringent slightly fair cancellation policy. But if you don't do it within 3 days, you will be having your money kept. Again, if you do not show up, you will have your deposit kept. The prices they do state are subject to change until they have been paid in full. They don't take any cash. They do offer this terrible care credit on qualifying purchases of $200 or more. And these are usually the dreadful payment plans that are offered at dental practices, esthetician's office. Many a medical office will offer these care credits, things that definitely really insurance does not cover. And the interest is just fantastic. There is an interest that will be charged to your account at the rate of a very reasonable, that was sarcastic, 26.99% for a new account from the purchase date if the promotional purchase is not paid in full within the promotional period. So often what they like to do is give you 6 months to have that paid in full. And if you have not paid that amount in full, they will not only start charging you interest, but backdate the interest to the beginning of the plan so that 26.99% gets added on through, depending on, if it's an APR or an APY, however they're doing it. But it will backdate and be onto that bill. Plus, then not only will you be having to pay that off, but it will be going then at a rate of 26.99%. So that sounds extremely affordable. They also have different purchases that come in. If you start to qualify at the beginning, they may give you, there's a 14% APR and a 16.9. Wow, that's not even 0%. So that's worse than, that's really bad. That's that seems to be the introductory rate, which is frightening to say the least. And then they have all this other thing and about the payment estimators and so forth. So you can imagine, because I think it's probably gone up from the article in 2016. I think I've heard something like $10,000 maybe. Can you imagine that at 16.9%? For a 5 years only term? I haven't been able to keep up with this, I guess, and paid that off in full before those 5 years. It's going to backdate to a 26.99% because that's usually what happens. So that sounds extremely affordable. So let's get back to the reaction. I'm sorry about that interruption, but I think it's really important to understand, then listening to these people speaking, just how bad this clinic is that's being literally given an hour's worth of advertisement and advertising space on Rachel Hollis's channel. And I wonder how much she's going to tote it on her upcoming tour that she is about to try to promote in October. I'm just trying to figure out who is the audience to go out and see this person speak, who is just coming from such an enormous place of privilege. I mean, she just says it's going to be like her Rach Talk show. I mean, I don't know if it's just like proximity to fame is what people might be interested in, but I mean, I just cannot imagine that would be enjoyable. Just like a night of this woman bragging and showing her just ridiculous amount of privilege. Okay, let's keep going. We know that's the place where Rachel got the brain scan. Okay, I'm just saying.
My training I think takes the best for both worlds. I'm well trained in standard of care medicine. I can prescribe most medications. But my preference is to utilize a holistic approach when I work with patients and treat the whole person, and also to address underlying issues instead of just using a Band-Aid approach.
I'd love to just unpack naturopath for a second, because if people aren't familiar with that terminology, can you give us some examples how, I know because you treat me, so I have a really good idea of this, but how you approach things, really looking at the whole self. What are your emotions doing? What are your hormones doing? What's going on with your body? Can you give us some examples of that?
Yeah, so I think it's important. Whole person approach means that I'm not just looking at your physical symptoms, and even more so, I'm not just looking at a physical symptom. A lot of times when people go to their doctor, there's literally, you have, maybe a 20-minute visit if you're lucky, and they will address one issue, right? So you can go in and you can say, I have headaches, and you can't say I have headaches and PMS and I can't sleep at night because that's too much for one visit. So there's more time.
I have to stop her there. Yes, technically you're supposed to go in with one question, but if you feel like you have a number of symptoms, then you try to make a consult for a physical with the doctor rather than just a consult, or an office visit. So there's different types of visits, and each type of visit will have a designated amount of time with the doctor. They encourage you just to have one question, but most patients, I can promise you, because I have seen patients coming in with a binder full of questions that the doctor takes and answers about multiple symptoms. So just to say that that's all your doctor does, I think is unfair to actual family practice, and really brushes aside what they do and really minimizes the work that these physicians do. Shame on you, Dr. Brush.
And space to address everything that's going on, and sort of the recognition that those things may be all part of.
And I would be curious to know if your health insurance covers this lady's visit too. So that would be interesting to know.
A common root cause. For example, those three things I just said might be because you have progesterone dominance or estrogen dominance, and so it could be all going back to the sex hormones. But you may, if you go to a mainstream doctor, maybe you just get headache medication for those three symptoms. Even though if we address the root cause, which may be this hormonal imbalance, we actually three birds with one stone there by addressing that underlying cause. Also, I think recognizing that we're not just physical beings, but we're mental, emotional, spiritual beings, and so all of those aspects are important when we're looking at whole person health and self-care, and recognizing that all of those are important components of us as human beings. And if we only address the physical, we're missing some big parts of what makes us healthy and whole.
Yeah, so I will tell listeners, I got to meet Dr. Brush for the first time because when I went to Dr. Amen, who the listener is very familiar with because he's been on the show several times, when I went to see Dr. Amen, you have to fill out just 9 miles of questionnaires to get in the room. You got to fill out all of this stuff, and in filling it out, when he first looked at it, he said, I think it's possible you're estrogen dominant. Have you ever had that tested? Do you know what that is? And
I don't know any physicians that would just say that. I mean, maybe so if you're describing symptoms, but I'm sure they would want to look at other lab type of work first than just, you're estrogen dominant, or I don't know. It just seems very strange. Very strange.
Googled immediately, I Googled what are the symptoms, and I started crying because
Okay, that's the thing we always advise patients, not to get onto the great God of Google and start looking up all these symptoms and stuff and start diagnosing yourself as, internet doctor and Google doctor and, all this stuff. That is really bad. I would not, that's where people get really stressed and upset. Bad, Rachel, bad advice. That's bad advice to give your listeners. Really, terrible advice.
All of those, almost all of them, I think there were 12 possible symptoms of estrogen dominance, and I had all but one. And I had thought I was sort of going crazy, or I was getting worse. The older I got, the worse I was getting. I just sort of had all these stories in my head about what was happening to me, and it never occurred to me that my hormones were out of balance. And so he set up time for us to talk and get to know, and immediately I was like, well, I've done the blood work.
I would highly suggest that you get blood work done.
Again, I don't know, and you were like, no, this is what's happening, and here's what we're going to do. And it felt like someone throwing me a life preserver. And
so had he looked at the blood work, or is he just prescribing because she has symptoms? What I've always understood, because I worked with a hematologist who studies blood work, and worked with plastic surgeons with skin cancers, and they all say unless you look at things at more of a molecular level, or you look at other things that you can really sort of see results of, you just don't go around prescribing things. So she's obsessed with some damn blood work. God damn it. Anyway, she making me cussy. I want to grab my beer, and this dog is on top of me. I love you, June-Bug. I love you.
I would love to talk about when women come to you, and what are the most common things that you're seeing or have seen over the last handful of years where people don't realize that it's actually this. With me, I didn't know it was estrogen dominance, and we can talk about that in a minute, the treatment plan and all of it. But what are you used to seeing that
I'm curious,
people are having like that light bulb go off, like I did, like, oh gosh, there's a way to help myself?
Yeah. I have to say that I get the light bulbs from people every day in my practice. There's a lot of people, I know there's lots of people in your audience who probably worked with a holistic or an integrated doctor, which is fantastic, and there's probably a lot of people who never have. But I get people every day as new patients who've never been asked the kinds of questions that they were asked on the intake, and who's never really had the chance to look for deeper issues, the time or space to do that. Certainly, female hormones is a big one. Any kind of hormones, actually. I think that a lot of times the testing that's done when people come with symptoms that might be hormonal or symptoms that may be hormonal but aren't on the surface immediately apparent, the testing that's done is very superficial. It's very it's a very narrow approach and very easily misses the problem. Not very sensitive, not very specific testing. So I say, well, my doctor checked my thyroid, for example, and all they did was look at TSH. Well, if you actually broaden that test, and you even add just 2 more tests to that thyroid panel, oh, wait a minute, thyroid's really sluggish, your thyroid's overactive, and that's playing a big role here. But I also, in clinic, a lot of my patients are focused on brain health, and there's so much.
This doctor is really wanting to throw medical doctors under the bus. Insurance companies require that you really have to have symptoms or fall into age groups or so forth in order to have these things, covered by insurance. You can't just order an array of tests and your insurance cover it. Rachel is coming from an extreme place of privilege. I don't think this doctor she is really like selling her business today and throwing, real medical doctors under the bus. So I would like to see when she's having a real medical issue, is she heading down to Dr. Amon's or is she heading herself to the emergency room?
That goes into brain health. There's so much about nutrition, lifestyle, mental, emotional health, as well as things like, we're always casting a net trying to figure out.
Again, they are speaking to so much privilege at this point. Everything they mentioned, a lot of people live in food deserts. A lot of the patients that I work with are in underserved areas. They don't often have access to even a good supermarket. They don't often have access to good medical care because they might be uninsured. They may live in multi-generational families in the same home. This just already, these 2 ladies are coming from such a place of privilege, and this other physician, she has thrown medical doctors, I think 14 times under the bus now. I'm going to keep listening, but this is just, I'm sorry, just in privilege.
What's causing the problems, toxicity in the environment, past exposures to chemicals, pesticides, and as well as hormonal balance, and especially hormonal insufficiency, absolutely plays an important role in brain health. So, those are some examples, but I would say that food allergies and sensitivities is another one that people don't realize how strong and multifaceted that kind of reaction can be. And a lot of times people have food allergies or sensitivities and they don't realize it because the reaction is delayed.
Great. Let's have people eat more Funkadoodle than they already do. Goodness me. I can't. I'm almost like, I need to put my beer down, but okay, we're going to keep listening. Okay, sorry.
So, for example, say if I have terrible brain fog today, something you ate 2 days ago, it can be really hard to figure that out, right? So.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I feel like, because when I was knowing that I was going to get to talk to you and so excited for the audience to get to hear your wisdom, I was thinking, I feel like you're, I don't know if this sounds.
I'm not excited for her audience to hear this lady's privileged wisdom.
Cheesy, but you're like a detective. And I've never sort of had a medical detective on my side helping to.
She's not medical, okay? She is a naturopathic doctor. She is not a medical doctor.
Figure out what's going on. And because you and I have talked pretty regularly over maybe the last 6-9 months even, I don't know how long it's been now. I feel like in the beginning of our relationship, I would have been like, oh, Dr. Brush, can I just get a session with you to talk through this? And now I feel like I'm learning to do that myself. Like I'm like, okay, what happened, or what's different about your pattern? Why are you? And I'm able to kind of create my own solutions. When before,
see, she's playing doctor. She has just admitted she is playing doctor, even in her own health. She just can't stop herself.
I thought, oh, this is just the way my brain is made, and there's not really anything I can do. And it's so empowering to understand what's happening, or to try and figure it out. And I would love it. Could you tell, just because this was such a huge thing for me, can you tell the symptoms of estrogen dominance or progesterone dominance? Like if somebody's listening.
Yes, please, so that everybody on your podcast can start to cry if they think they have these symptoms as well. You know, so everyone could just, you know.
To this, and they're about to have that light bulb moment that I have. Will you walk us through what emotions they might be experiencing that can tell them that something's off with them hormonally?
Sure, and you know, I
emotions.
feel like you
Emotions.
as well. I agree. I feel like I'm absolutely a detective, because when someone comes in initially, now I do sometimes use Band-Aid approaches, and I prefer natural approaches when possible, but I do sometimes use medication. But a lot of times I'll use a Band-Aid while we're addressing the underlying issue, just so the patient feels a little bit better. In the meantime, while we're doing a little more detective work, a little more digging, maybe a little more testing. And there are, you know, a lot of signs and symptoms of estrogen dominance, and I would say they change maybe a little bit throughout as we age. But I think estrogen dominance is far more common in Western civilization than progesterone dominance. I would say I can probably count on one hand times I've seen progesterone dominance, but estrogen dominance is very common for a number of reasons. Some very common symptoms in someone who's cycling would be, and a female who's still having her periods, would be PMS, okay? Especially PMS that's pretty intense, and I usually say, you know, if it's changing your life and your function in that week to 2 weeks before your period, that's a good sign, because that's the time of the month that we would naturally expect both estrogen and progesterone to go up and have this nice little peak. If progesterone is not strong, then estrogen has more of a peak than the progesterone. That's when you feel that estrogen dominance the most. It tends to make us very emotional. I like to tell people it's not that you create any problems, but the things in your life that don't feel quite right, or a little off kilter, or maybe would be normally a little irritating, but something you could live with and just move on from, feel bigger. So those emotional swings can feel a lot stronger.
And I feel like it's important. I want to just stop on this really quickly, because I was raised, my friends are raised, so many women I know were raised to believe you're going to turn into a super bitch the week before. You're going to act like a crazy person. You're going to be mean to everyone. You're going to cry out, and that's normal. And if people don't walk away with anything else out of this conversation, what I want them to hear is that I love it how you said it, like if it's affecting your life in major ways, if you're having that kind of wild swings, something's going on, and there is help, and there are things that you can do that will make it get better. So
and then go please seek some assistance from your actual medical doctor, because Rachel Hollis doesn't know if you also have any other chemical imbalances that might actually be to do with the brain that might. I'm curious about these medicines she says she keeps being able to prescribe. I'm curious, because naturopathic doctors are not medical doctors.
Before you finish, I just want people to hear that.
I love that, and I think it's actually really important that we recognize this is not because you are crazy or just irrational, because I think that it's really important to understand, have some compassion for the fact that our hormones have a really strong effect on our emotional well-being, and that we can really feel hijacked by our hormones, and it's not a flaw in our character.
I didn't mean to interrupt the doctor. I think the thing that just came to my mind is how confident Rachel Hollis sounds despite a lack of any post-high school education, because she has read and Googled so much stuff. She feels just the confidence in her voice. Oh my goodness.
It's not a flaw in our gender. It is a sign of an imbalance that can be corrected. I don't know if you know this, but a lot of young women who have suicidality, who have depression that gets, periodically.
I'm so sorry. Rachel Hollis never tells you if you need a trigger warning, okay? So they are now talking about unaliving themselves. I apologize. No trigger warning at the start of her podcast, because she wouldn't think to do that. It's all about her, and she's the expert. Oh, God, she irritates me.
where they actually feel like they want to self-harm or they want to, end their lives, there can be the estrogen dominance can be playing a really big role. I can't even tell you how many young women come to me after a suicide attempt, and when I talk to them more and more, I realize every suicide attempt, most self-harm is happening in that week to 2 weeks before their period.
And it said she is June, but please. So